a relationship breakup is very much a grieving process. I mean, we have to mourn a person who we assumed we were going to spend the rest of our lives with. And yet, what we don't talk about quite as often is the grieving that has to take place within the context of our relationships when the dynamic somehow changes. We forget that so much of our overall life satisfaction is based on the quality of our relationships, and so many of our struggles are relationally based. And we assume that good people can't hurt us, whereas oftentimes they do unintentionally. They can really trigger us. Any relationship can trigger us, and it oftentimes can leave us feeling a little bit traumatized, particularly when the trust is somehow compromised. And I suppose it's recognizing that a relationship isn't meant to stagnate. It is always meant to evolve. It's always meant to be fluid. Whereas we tend to attach ourselves to the idea that it is meant to be fixed and that it's never going to change. And yet, when we look at ourselves as people, we have to evolve. We have to change who we are. I mean, as we mature, as we grow, as we learn, we're always going to evolve. Our values, our beliefs are going to transition. So our relationship needs to grow with it. Likewise, there are going to be life circumstances that are going to rock the very core of our relationship, whether it be kids coming along, whether it be redundancy, financial pressures, infidelities, whatever it is, there are always going to be challenges. And it's recognizing that that doesn't necessarily have to be the nail in the coffin. I suppose, firstly, we need to talk a little bit about our expectations within relationship context. You know, we tend to come into relationships with all of this baggage from our family of origin, from our past relationships, past experiences, and without even realizing it, that any pain or any trauma or any conditioning from our past very much dictates our expectations from our current relationship. It gives us a blueprint, and when things don't play out the way that we expect, we tend to react fairly badly. And also, we tend to interpret things based on our past experiences. So we're not always seeing things at a very logical level. We're not always seeing the reality of a situation, and we need to be very mindful of that. And that's where the journey of self-inquiry and self-awareness is so important for each partner, because ultimately, the more aware you are of yourself, the more you can show up for your partner, and likewise them for you. And you can encourage each other in this process. You can help each other out. I mean, ultimately, you're never going to know yourself 100%. I mean, that's a lifelong process. Likewise, you're never going to know your partner 100%. And that's part of the beauty of a relationship. You know, always applying that curiosity, always finding out something new about them, always recognizing that there's room for novelty, that there's room for something new to grow. But instead, we tend to be like, no, it was like this for the first 12 months. I want it to be like this all of the time. And when you have that attitude in your relationship, then you're always going to struggle, because life just isn't like that. You're going to be presented with challenges. Your partner is going to be presented with challenges. You're going to have health issues, whether they be mental or physical. You're going to have betrayals. You're going to have disappointments, but you're also going to have great joy. You're also going to have great experiences. And it's about trying to put your attention towards the good and then trying to repair the not so good. And like so much of our relationship quality is about how quickly we repair, how quickly we recognize that there's a problem. And yet our tendency is to go into autopilot. You know, you have two people and they're both going about their own ways, finding their own distractions, finding ways to avoid dealing with the elephant in the room, and just hoping that things are going to get better all by themselves. And they very rarely do. And that disconnect tends to grow. And I mean, ultimately, we all need to feel connected in order to thrive. So when we experience disconnect in our closest relationship, it is heartbreaking. And I suppose the one way that we can overcome that is by, first of all, recognizing the role that we have to play in the disconnect. Because oftentimes in our relationships, we can be very quick to point the finger, and we can be very quick to look at one specific event that fucked everything up, as opposed to looking at the build up. And the build up can be happening for years before, you know, everything finally explodes, whether it be an affair, whether it be a partner breaking down. down. We tend to see these things as isolated, and they rarely are. And it's looking at the dynamic and the build up prior to that, and the ways in which you perhaps let yourself down or you let your partner down. Now, that's not saying that you accept all of the blame, but it's about accountability. It's about, kind of being responsible for your own growth within the context of the relationship, and not assuming that it is always fair to just point the finger. Again, we don't like feeling we're to blame, and we don't like change. So we tend to just grasp onto this self-righteousness and keeping things exactly the same. And you are never going to grow. You are never going to evolve with that attitude. We then need to show that curiosity that I referred to helping our partner, and to deciphering what it is that's going on, and discerning what the issue is, and what's happening, and really talking to each other about it. And these conversations are so fucking difficult, because there's a lot of venom, there's a lot of pain, and there's a lot of hurt. But again, we need to, I suppose, feel how we feel, and very much honor it, and very much express it, but also recognize our partner's pain and recognize their hurt, and try to really hear each other, because we tend to really, really desire being heard and understood and seen, and we don't always make the effort to understand and to see the other person, and to fully recognize them in their suffering and in their pain. And that can be so hard to do when you just want to fucking kill them, when you hate them for hurting you so much. But underneath all that hate is sadness. Underneath the anger is sadness and disappointment. And I suppose it's allowing that to come to the surface, and then meeting each other with that sadness, and making a decision as to whether or not you can grow through it and grow as a couple, or whether or not you need to go your separate ways. And it's not rushing that decision. I mean, you don't have to make something like this overnight. Oftentimes these decisions take months to make, as you kind of take one step forward, two steps back, and you try to kind of make your way through things. But it's recognizing that if there is a willingness there, if there is hope there, and if there is love there, that it is always worth the try. And this is the one time when you need to show up as authentically as possible, with as much honesty, and being as humble as you possibly can. It's not a place for pride, it's not a place for self-righteousness, and it is not a place for kind of your false self. You need to be who you actually are, even if you feel that's not what your partner is looking for, because so much of what we do in the initial stages of our relationships is based on what we think will get us approval, or what will get us attached. And, unfortunately, we can only keep that up for so long. So you have to be able to release that, and show yourself as you really are. Show your beliefs, show your needs, show your desires and your hopes and your dreams and your sadnesses, and see if you're able to meet each other in the middle, And it's about trying to see each other's perspective, being very reflective about things that you can do better, trying to feel where the other person is at, trying not to criticize, trying not to show any contempt, instead being kind and appreciative, and recognizing all that they do right as opposed to all that they've done wrong. I mean, we tend to be very critical when it comes to our partners. We tend to actually leave them at the bottom of the pile. They're really kind of in the shit heap, as opposed to being right up there where your partner should be. And we get the hierarchy all mixed up. We tend to assume, that our friends or our kids or our work needs to come first, and then ourselves, and then our partners. But the reality is, it needs to be ourselves first, but then our partners next, and then the kids. Because ultimately, if your relationship is weak, if it doesn't have a strong foundation, then of course the kids are going to be impacted. I mean, there's going to be very little for them, and you have to realize as well that you are giving your kids the blueprint for what a strong, good, honest, kind, caring, compassionate relationship is. It's about understanding, it's about forgiveness, it's about recognizing your own pain and recognizing their pain, and doing the best to come out of your head and your idea and expectations of what things should be, and instead working with your reality and the reality of the other person. I hope everyone is having a lovely day. I'll talk to you soon.